October 3rd, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart using the NinjaTrader 8 platform. Look at the descriptions below. You can see where I thought I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. There's only one piece of economic data that came out today. It was around 7 o'clock Pacific Standard, which is right about where my cursor is, about here on the chart. It was the JOLTS job openings report. You could argue that it created this big sell-off, but I'm not so sure that was the only reason. I think maybe the sell-off was just coming and it just happened to be this way. The way I drew up my charts today, it looked like it was just one gigantic, slow but very deliberate sell-off. Kind of was contained in this red channel. The pre-market highs are here and the pre-market lows are right there. I did see a few, corrections and then a few overlaps. Overall trading today, there was a lot of volume, but there was a lot of setups that it was just very congested in a lot of areas. So it wasn't the most obvious. And there were a few setups that I took that I think were probably a little more riskier or aggressive. And then there were certainly some setups that I think were possible trades. So I'm going to go into my chart right now. I'm going to try something different today with my chart review because I know my chart reviews take a long time, probably longer than they should. So I'm just going to go a little bit differently. So this is the pre-market highs marked here, pre-market lows marked here. In the pre-market, it looks like it was just chopping around. There's this gigantic sell-off and moved from 43.34 all the way down to 43.92. So it moved about 40 points in the pre-market, which is kind of interesting. And once it opened, I was noticing it did fall into this channel first, and I saw one push up, pull back, a second push up, and inside this pullback here, I saw one leg and a second leg. So I actually saw a second entry long right here. There's a good signal bar. The thing I don't really like necessarily about this trade, even though it has two clean moves down, it could bounce. It didn't quite touch this, give me a warm and fuzzy that it was a third bounce necessarily. It could have been more aggressive. I think I would have taken it. It is below the EMA though, so I don't quite like that. If it just ticked one tick above, and I would have negated the fact that it didn't touch the bottom of this ascending green channel, but it didn't quite line up. So I wanted to wait for a confirmation. The confirmation actually does set up right here. It's a higher low. This is actually the first trade that I took. So I actually went first entry long, second entry long comes up, pulls back, and it creates this higher low, also creates this double bottom with the EMA holding. And there was enough room to scalp out from here to here. So you can see where I took my trade. I entered on this candle not really one tick, but at the high of this signal bar, which I liked. And I quickly just looked for a 1 point scalp just because I didn't want to risk running into a potential resistance here. I didn't have this blue range drawn yet, but I was aware that it could become a range. So that's kind of why I exited just a little early. And then you see prices kind of chop around. And today's price action kind of reminded me of a day like last week where there was just a lot of movement, but it was just things were just staying very tight and close together. And when you zoom out, then you see these big trends that form. And unfortunately, until you can see that big trend, it's hard to know if you're about to enter one and take a trade. Saw a new high here. It's a first entry long, second entry long. I also draw my ascending green channel, which I actually already had it as a trend line from here to here, but it didn't quite touch here. And I wasn't really sure where the top of the range was, so I actually had it a little bit lower. And this was an overshoot. And I was concerned when I saw this overshoot, thinking, it might actually push down to here and create another overshoot. But since when it bounced back up, gave me confidence for this trade. Of course, then later, when this occurs, a little bit later, I did drag this up to here. So I'm just going to drag it up to there for now, just so it makes my life a little easier. Saw a new high here, first entry long, second entry long, second entry long. This is a terrible signal bar. This is a second entry long right here. Well, it's confirmed second entry long here. EMA is holding prices right now, but it is kind of flattening. So there's kind of a trend going up. But I did also notice that it is bouncing off the outside of this range. However, I wasn't 100% sure if this is an overshoot and this range really is true, because you could easily argue that potentially this range might actually be up here, in which case it might be re-entering. When you see this red candle come down, it could be coming back down to touch the bottom. Of course, in hindsight, then I drag the range here, but of course, that's always in hindsight. So I wasn't sure if this was actually going to be a safe trade to take, because it bounces off here, but there's enough room to get to the top before you enter, or before you potentially get stopped out here. And I was depending on where you drew, where you put your stop, because if you entered here and you put your stop one tick below this red candle, you would have gotten stopped out, so it would have trapped you and then continued the direction you wanted to go. But I think you would have ideally put your stop right here, because you wouldn't put it so close to the current movement. You put it at the last previous swing. And so it did bounce off this and flash up. By the time this candle formed and closed, the trade was already made. I thought it was too late. So then prices go up. It touches the top of this area. That's where I dragged the top of the trend channel up to here because it used to be touching here at the bottom. And it kind of goes into sideways consolidation. I saw a new high here. It's a first entry long, pulls back a second entry long, but I also saw this as a new low, first entry short, second entry short. So it looks like there's two key entry points. It looks like it's the top of this potential range. And the setup for the second entry long right here isn't a very good signal bar. So the failure looks like it's okay. But then when you have a first entry short, second entry short, this is where your signal bar for your second entry short is. And it confirms here. The second entry short, I kind of wanted, well, I was kind of concerned that there's prices here are really congested. They're just sitting side by side. And at this point, I didn't really have a third confirmation of this red channel coming down because this red channel at this point in time didn't exist yet. So I didn't have that as a key entry point to play with. And right now, prices look like they're pushing up. So it felt like it would have been a counter trend trade. So I wasn't really sure. I said I should just wait for a higher or a lower high confirmation or a higher low. But I didn't really quite get either. And then prices just kind of moved all the way down. So that's okay to miss this trade because this one was a little confusing for me. Then when it came down here, I saw a new low, first entry short, second entry short, and then a lower high right here. Now, I thought this might have been a possible trade because it is confirming the second entry short, first entry short, second entry short. It looks like it might have failed second entry short, but it came down, closed very, very bearish, which is a pretty decent signal bar. I just wanted to bounce against the EMA. So I actually wanted this to push up higher and have an EMA rejection to feel a little bit more confident. But the other thing that was going for is potentially this is the break of this yellow channel. And when it came down, it already tested the low. So now it's pushing once up, came back, pushing a second time. So it already made the new low. I wasn't sure if the downtrend had played out, and now it might be reversing to come up to this green trend. So it was a little confusing for me. My inexperience didn't really give me clear indication which way to go, so I had to skip this trade. Turns out it would have worked pretty nicely. Price actually kind of falls into this downward channel. There's no clean second entries. You have a new high here, first entry long. Technically you have a second entry long, but there's no real setup, nothing to really hang your hat off here. Prices then went down, it breaks out, and then it comes back down. But as you can see, these candles are just side by side. They're very, very close together, very, very tight and pretty much the same size. So even if the second entry is set up, you only have like a second entry or first entry, long or short, made by one or two ticks. And that makes me nervous because one or two tick movements above the previous candle or bar typically sets up a bunch of traps. So they had to, just kind of sit more patiently and wait. And then prices continue chopping down. This is what the overall market looks like right now. And I did start searching because I drew this bottom red channel here and I tried to make the top fit. And I wanted these two to touch. So it looked like I could only get this guy and these two to touch, but I couldn't quite encapsulate and get this top one. Otherwise, it'd make the slope more aggressive or it'd be too far and I'd only have one touch with nothing down here if I also wanted to have some kind of confirmation at the bottom. So I had to settle on this second high right here. And then prices continue moving down. It chops sideways. So I do see a second entry long here, but there's no real reason to take this trade because you have a new high. So first entry long pulls back, second entry long. This is the signal bar. So you wouldn't know to get ready for a trade here. You do see a potential bounce off of this point, but this signal bar isn't giving you much confidence. So you definitely had to skip it. So then you see this, and then I do see this higher low. So this higher low, I was thinking, okay, it went first entry long, second entry long, comes back, and now it's going to push up because it created this higher low. Now, what I failed to do was I failed to keep into consideration that I might be in the top of a trading range, which would have been formed by this blue line down here and the top here. Later, of course, I dragged the range a little bit lower down to here, but for example, if at the time what I was playing with was the ranges up here and down here. And so I took this entry, entered right here, and of course it flashed down and took me out. So this wasn't a well thought out trade because I didn't consider the potential of a resistance here or that I was potentially in a range. So I'd be buying right into the highs. And that's exactly what happened. Prices then continued chopping down. So I was still playing with the idea that this blue line was the bottom of the trading range. And so I saw this as a new low, first entry short, second entry short. So this second entry short, it fails right here. And this failed second entry short, I was thinking it is the bottom of this current range that I was playing with. There's an overshoot here or a fail breakout, came up, came back down. And I'm thinking when I saw this, there's enough buying pressure because it probably wants to test the high of this recent uptrend, this green uptrend, to get a quick scalp. So that's exactly what I did. I entered when I saw this, and this is floating. I entered right here and it came back and filled me, which is great. And then it flashed up and I got my quick scalp. And then I wanted to make sure I got out before I hit the top here. This yellow channel doesn't exist yet. So prices are chopping around. So when it comes down, I decided to drag this blue line down to here. And that's where I actually have my larger trading range. And I noticed there's kind of a bearish imbalance. The highs are getting lower each time. Finally breaks out, and this is actually what I see is where I take my actual fourth trade. Now this fourth trade, I saw this as a failed breakout and a higher low. But when I look back in hindsight, I don't think that was good enough for a trade because I saw these candles. So this one broke out and off of no news that I could see, it flashed up and I'm thinking, because for a while it dwelled up here and it looked like a very solid green candle. And when it flashed down, I said, I need to enter this trade. So I entered right here and I was able to quickly get a scalp before it hit the EMA. But when I look at this in hindsight, there's actually more reasons not to take this trade than there was to take this trade. Because after you have this break, you would think prices want to come back down and test the low of this green channel. Also, you're already at the lows of this, so this could be a failed breakout, but it could also be a failed breakout pullback. And right now, the bias is telling me this making lower highs every time and also lower lows, except for this one right here. So why would I want to take a long? Well, as I said, at the time when these candles were forming, they looked very aggressive. It also happened very quickly because you can look at the timestamp 740 in 10 seconds, 740 in 30 seconds, 741. So in about 1 minute, these three candles were forming. And I got a little caught up and jumped in before I really accepted or believed or kind of reviewed what was going on. So although it worked out, I think it was a trade that I definitely should have skipped. Then prices continue chopping. So I'm going to try to make my videos shorter by not rambling. It falls down and I actually drew the bottom of this yellow channel and I kind of tried to make the top fit, but I wasn't too happy with it. Also, the red channel at this point was fitting pretty nicely because I had one touch, two touch, three. The bottom had one touch, two touch, and I have a third touch here now. So I'm pretty confident we're this down channel or this downtrend, a sell-off, but I wasn't 100% sure this red channel was it, but it did fit nicely. However, it's something pretty large to work with, so that's how come I came up with this yellow channel. I saw one push up, one pull back, another push up, a second pullback, and I actually saw this as a new high, clearly a new high. First entry long, pulls back. This is where the second entry long was created, but I also saw this as a new low. And I saw it as a visual. First entry short, pulls back, second entry short, then it fails. It failed. When this candle was forming, I'm thinking, oh, okay, there might actually be enough pressure because the EMA isn't really that important right now because if prices are above and below it. It might have enough push to come up before it hits the top, might get a quick scalp. So when this candle formed, and during its life of the formation, I decided, okay, I want to enter on this trade. And I was lucky to put it one tick above and get filled. And I was able to quickly get my scalp. So that was actually the last trade that I took. Because I also saw this as a channel coming down. It broke out, made one attempt down, failed, tried to do a second time. And that's where the first entry short, second entry short on a larger time frame visual failed and it pushed back up. Then, of course, it chops around. It falls into what is clearly now a trading range. And I don't see any good setups that I like. It's just kind of chopping. And similar to this larger trading range, it has a bearish imbalance where it's making lower highs each time and lower lows. Same thing as lower highs. and these are making lower lows. It's getting a little congested, a little confusing. I'm just kind of sitting on my hands now. I also took a total of 5 trades. 4 of them were green and 1 of them was red. So I wanted not to push my luck now because I was definitely in the green and I didn't want to give any of that back. On a day like this where I took that many trades, so early, I just thought I need to slow down, maybe just watch the rest of the day, but don't take any further trades. That's kind of what the plan I fell into today. And I saw this price action. It kind of breaks out. It falls into this area of congestion. You could argue there was a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. This is a signal bar that's pretty decent for second entry short, but it's also at the lows of this range. Depending on how you drew your trading range, if you actually drew it a little bit lower, then you could argue you might have enough room to scalp out, but the way I had it was a little bit higher about right here. So it gave me a little bit of pause, a little bit of concerns, like, am I buying right into a potential support? So I had to leave it alone. And prices chopped in this. This just looks very, very congested. Look at these candles just side by side. It's very hard to tell which way the setup is going to go because even if you find second entries, it's a little confusing. And so whenever there's a possibility of going long or short without a clear indication which way is going to be the higher probability, I tend to just sit it out. A different trader would probably look at this price action and probably clearly see different setups and know a lot more, uh, know the tendency of the market a lot better than I would. And I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying from my experience, that's what I saw. And I just had to be a little more conservative. And prices went up. It broke out of this green channel, made a new high. So I think the uptrend has played out. It's probably going to come back down because the overall trend right now is bearish. I don't see a clean setup that I like. It gets a little bit ugly here, just like previously. All these price actions are just very, very stemmy. Falls into this range. And I saw this as a new high, first entry long, second entry long. I saw this higher low. This higher low, I wasn't sure if it was an actual good trade or not, but it does confirm the first entry long, second entry long. And it is kind of in the middle of this range though. So I think it might have been more of an aggressive trade because there is enough room to scalp out before you hit the top. But as I said, I wasn't thinking of taking any more trades for the day. But I did see this and I was thinking, would I have taken this trade? And I'm not so sure I would have. Then of course it flashes up. It creates what looks like it's another trading range. So it's like 2 trading ranges overlapping. I saw this as a new high, first entry long, pulls back, creates a second entry long. But I also saw this as a new low, first entry short right here, pulls back, creates a second entry short, and it creates a failed second entry short. So technically there are 2 setups right here. And the signal bar for the second entry long, which is right here, is kind of like neutral. It's so. And I didn't think, let's see. So as I was, let me roll back. So I was thinking we're in these 2 ranges here, or potentially 1 big range. What was making me a little confused was this first entry long, second entry long comes back. I wasn't sure if I was really at the bottom of this range. So if I went long, it might have been safe because I'm technically at the low of this range. However, if I was to believe I was re-entering this range, what gave me pause was potentially I'm re-entering this guy now. So this could have been a prolonged failed breakout. Now it's coming back in. So is there a possibility that it went first entry long, second entry long, and even though this failed second entry short hasn't failed yet, is it going to continue back down to this side? I wasn't sure. So it's a little confusing. I just had to sit out and just kind of watch this go. Like in hindsight, I think there's probably the very large trading range here. But this trading range, the thing I don't like about drawing this big trading range like this is in the beginning, you have confirmations at the bottom, and you clearly have confirmations somewhere in the middle, but then you have another confirmation up here, but then you don't have it down here and you have it here. So that's why I treated it as 2 overlapping trading ranges. So that gave me a little bit of confusion. It looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, no man's land. So I had to leave it alone. Prices then continue chopping. It comes up and touches, lo and behold, the top of this red channel, which is great, but I didn't see any entries or any setups that I really, really like. It was one here. If you said it was a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, but this is a terrible signal bar. You could have considered this as a higher low and re-entering this trading range, but I just kind of watched it and let it pass. Prices then continue moving down. I saw this as a hidden second entry short. It's a new low, the first entry short. It looks like it broke up and then it came back down. So it's like a first entry short, then it came up to here and came back down. So this is where the second entry short hidden was. So it's first entry short, second entry short, and it looks like it's a rejection off the EMA and rejection off this descending channel. So there could have been a possible trade here. Then prices continue going down. It looks like it hits and consolidates off of what looks like one touch, two touch, three touch, but I certainly wasn't going to consider it a triple test and go long. What I did see is a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. The second entry short, it's a decent signal bar, but I just wanted it to actually be a little bit higher up because right here to take a short felt like I'm going to run into this potential support or even the lows right here. So I didn't feel like there's enough room to confidently get a scalp. So kind of leave it alone. Prices then continue chopping. It falls into this range. I guess, well, it gets pretty noisy. I do see a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. When I saw this, I'm thinking this could be a potential second entry short failure. You technically get a failure here, but the second entry short failure, it just feels like the way this closed, doji, it felt risky. Plus, I'm breaking out of this green channel, so it could be trying to break back down into finding a new low. The thing is, the breakout was not a very impulsive, deliberate breakout. It was more of a sideways move till it broke out because it chopped around for too long. So that leaves me a little confused. So I did have to wait for see if there's a higher low. You technically get a higher low right here, but I just didn't like it because it's also coming back into what this could potentially be a resistance now. It used to be a support. So I wasn't sure. So at that point, I was already resided myself not to take any further trades. So I wasn't looking too hard for a setup. Then prices in, continue chopping, goes into this trading range, comes up, touches this red channel again. So I'm pretty happy that I found this red channel. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to capitalize on it. Prices then continue moving down, chops, and we're getting kind of into the last hour. I don't see any clean setups. I do see a new low here. It's a first entry short. Technically, you have a second entry short here. You can see one leg up, push back, second leg up. But taking a second entry short here doesn't look that good because the signal bar isn't great. It might have been worth considering if it went up and actually touched this red trend line and closed bearish, because then you would think, okay, it might be a fail breakout on top of this trading range. Then prices then continue chopping. Again, I don't really see anything that I like. It falls into this up channel. It breaks out of the red channel finally. And then it just gets really noisy because this is the last 10 minutes. And typically the last 10 minutes is just where price action gets a little bit more whipsaw and choppy just because people are closing out their positions. So kind of how I saw the charts today, it was, I think most of the trades I thought were kind of in here and here and maybe toward the beginning. But overall, the clearly a bearish downtrend. And I took pretty much the majority of my trades were counter trend, and I don't think that was the best thing, but at the time they looked okay to me. So definitely a few trades that I felt I just got by the skin of my teeth, and I need to pretty much go back and review it, watch a few other YouTubers that are more or that are way better than me, and compare my notes. So if you're doing the same, definitely don't use my setups and my trades as a standard. You can just compare it with what you thought you saw. Of course, keep in mind that my skill level isn't anywhere near a level where you should trust it as some kind of authority. So anyways, thanks for watching.